Hello again. This is part three, the invitation conversation. So for me, it's been about 20, 25 minutes that I've been doing these recordings. For you, you've been here now about 4, maybe 5 hours. So it's kind of interesting, the time differences. So I hope you're enjoying our presentations. I hope you're making a connection. And I'm looking forward to hearing more of your feedback and what resonates for you. So the invitation conversation, what does that mean? What is an invitation? What qualities, what qualities need to be present for an invitation to be safe enough to try or to be compelling enough to try? So before we start this third conversation, which is actually going to be presented in 4 parts now. So we've invested 4 hours in this conversation, and I'll be breaking those up into 4 parts. But I want you to think about the question: what is an invitation, and what are the qualities of an invitation that would be compelling for you? One of the things that came up for us during this conversation is the invitation is to spend 12 hours in an environment where we start to make our values explicit and we get to practice those values. And as we go into this conversation, you will be introduced to some of those values. Welcome to part three, the invitation conversation. Excellent. Well, great to see everybody. Let's start with a check-in. So how are you arriving and what are you bringing? And then we'll open the floor up for someone to just reflect, ask clarifying questions, show appreciation. So whoever would like to start, please feel free to jump on in. And how are you arriving and what are you bringing?
I'll begin. Good morning. Hello. Oh,
Morning.
I'm arriving. Good morning. Good morning. I'm arriving centered, present, and curious. I've found numerous opportunities in the past few weeks since we've met to become open to the now moment and all it brings as like loud and clear, and how often I can soften in the now moment. And so that's been pretty like over time becoming more fun to do, dare I say. It's becoming more of a call to that comfort that is here now. And so with that like experience, that knowing that it's here and now, I'm really, really excited to see how our time together unfolds. Okay, what am I bringing and what am I expecting? Is that the second part?
How are you arriving and what are you bringing?
Yes, I'm arriving excited. I'm arriving with this, it's like, yes, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. So with that, I'm in. Thank you.
Take a moment, and anyone who would like to reflect back to Nefertiti, feel free to do so if it feels right.
It sounded like you had a pretty good week, and maybe 2 good weeks since we've got some space between these. You got some new opportunities, and you're excited to be here. I definitely am feeling the same way. Excited to be here. This group's always fun and uplifting, and I don't leave it feeling drained, which is a rarity on groups, especially nowadays. So, I'm arriving hopefully to figure out how everybody else answered the question that you put out, because I had a really hard time. I struggled with that. I felt like all of them were really important questions. So I'm curious to see how other people answered it, and I'm missing the people that aren't here today, because there's some really good folks that are on this group. So I'll be missing their input, but I'm glad to see everybody else here. So thank you very much.
Janet, do you want to reflect or would you like me to? Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Lynn. What I'm hearing, yes, I resonate very strongly missing the people who are not here today. So that's something that resonates very strongly with me, you had mentioned. I'm very appreciative that that this is a space that that holds life for you, that it's not draining. So and I'm very happy and very excited and very appreciative that you took the time to really explore those questions. So we're going to explore those a little bit today, and I'll reveal a little more as we get into today's conversation. But I appreciated hearing your answers and knowing Janet's answers and knowing Gary's answers and knowing my own answers. I think we're in for a really fun time today. So yeah, so that's what I want to reflect back, listening to your check-in. So I'm arriving kind of a mixed bag, but mostly I'm feeling very appreciative and very happy. My last couple weeks, working with these kinds of conversations has helped us to understand how we're kind of working with different parts of the brain and how we're rewiring the brain. So that's very exciting to me. That's something that we've been exploring, and having the conversations about, making the brain work in this kind of a way might have something to do with evolution. We're not sure yet, but it's pretty exciting to consider those possibilities. I'm also arriving feeling very sad because the other day Edie had Edie had declined coming to future conversations, and it made me reflect a lot because I actually had to bow out of a conversation as well because of family obligations and just having a lot to do. So I'm sad. I'm mourning that. I'm very reflective of all of the commitments that we have. But because of that I guess I would call it mourning. Because of that mourning process, I'm very appreciative of the time that we have, and very appreciative of Gary. Gary sent me his his responses as well too. So I'm very, very appreciative of being able to take the time and really connect and really talk about what matters. So that's how I'm arriving, and what I'm bringing is the willingness and the curiosity, to really kind of explore these questions. So this is the invitation conversation today. And rather than get into tasks or get into action items, which we will get into next conversation, the invitation is, where do we most align? What's important to us, and whatever action we decide to take or not to take moving forward. I'm really curious and excited about exploring what matters most, and I'm in with that. You're on mute, Janet.
The first thing that I received from you was appreciation. You've been having a lot of conversations with people and looking at how is it possible that we can create evolution by literally rewiring our brains? How we are deciding to work our brains is changing things, and that's bringing a lot of excitement to your life. And then on the other hand, I heard this sadness, a mourning process that you're experiencing. And it sounds to me like it's not just about Edie choosing to leave, but because of her looking at the fact that, I spoke to her too, looking at the fact that she's so busy, brought up for you the question about commitment. You too had to drop out of something due to your commitments. And so you're going through this mourning process, but at the same time, that mourning process is pushing you closer into the connections that you are having. And you're bringing to this a willingness and a lot of curiosity. You're excited and curious to see where these things are going, these questions that you put out and how they're going to explore, how we're going to explore them and what's going to come from that. And I heard the word alignment, which I really liked. I didn't quite get what you were saying about that, but something about us aligning. I liked that. So I am I'm not going to call it difficult. I'm in a strange place. I've been in a strange place all week. I was under 4 hours of anesthesia last week because of a breakdown of the computers during surgery that I had. My parathyroid basically almost completely removed. They leave a little bit. And all of this, they're telling me, they're pretty sure has to do with the mistake that was made in the 90s with my lithium, which also forced me to get, caused me to have a kidney added to my body. So that messed up with the calcium in my parathyroid. So all week, I had an experience this week of literally going back to being mentally ill. It was as if I was back in the 80s. And it was so frightening. And it's been very hard for me to shake it off. I've had to work really hard this week with people in my life, with my emergency appointments, my therapist, 12-step groups, just really reaching out to stay strong and stable. And it's the closest I think I've been to all of that since I've been feeling pretty well over the last 12 years. So I am bringing I've been crying a lot. Like, do not be surprised if I just suddenly start crying during this session. People will say like one sentence and all of a sudden tears will come and I'm not even sure where they're coming from. But I understand that anesthesia can do this. I'm excited to see, those questions were so thought-provoking. And I'm really excited to see how this is going to pan out. I'm a little fearful, I haven't been I've been rereading my journals of the past 12 years. And I'm realizing that when my husband was alive, we were really go-getting. We were presenting at conferences all over the place. He had so much energy. We were doing so much. And I'm realizing that over the COVID years here, I've been slowing down, which I also realized I've needed. I've very, very much needed to slow down and get off the hamster wheel. And when I spoke to you, Mike, the other day after I talked to Edie, I realized Edie has been so busy for so long. And it's hard for me to even get together with her as a friend. And I've realized it really has made me think a lot about quote unquote busyness and how much COVID has helped me to stop being as busy. I'm still kind of busy. I've got a lot going on, but I don't want that feeling of busyness in my life so much. So that's what I'm bringing that to today. What was the thing? What are we bringing and what are we?
How are we arriving and what are we bringing?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm arriving with that vulnerability, and what I'm bringing is a desire to support people as well as myself in not living a life that's just run like a hamster wheel life, for lack of a better way to put it. And that's it for me. I'm in.
Great, thank you. And I'll give Nefertiti a chance to reflect.
Thank you. Man, what I really appreciate, Janet, I've shared this with you often. You are a walking, talking, business indeed, like practical application. I have such admiration for those who bring experiential depth to conversations. And that's what I see in you, Janet. And I really appreciate hearing, and it's very, well collided with my world of stepping into WRAP, Wellness Recovery Action Plan, this week, and hearing you share about how you are aware of yourself, acknowledging yourself, and then taking the steps you need to stay where you desire to be, and you want to bring that to others. I appreciate that. I heard that you're starting to recognize different types of energies, and like how your actions can either create this type of feeling or that type of feeling. So, you know, maybe while you're in it, it's hard to see it. And so being out of it, you're able to step and see where you want your energy to be. And so I really appreciate that. And I thank you for bringing your desire to be vulnerable and excited to find a way for us all to feel that feeling we all have inside. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Neff. Since there's only 4 of us today, I'm not going to do two breakout rooms. So this is going to be a one big conversation between the 4 of us, I think. But the first thing I wanted to ask, and we'll just let the conversation go organically, and I would like to invite everyone to continue to practice reflection, asking clarifying questions. But what was this process like for you, looking at the questions, trying to pick out some questions? Now, one of the things that I'd like to explore is, are there questions that might be missing? Are there questions that seem similar, that they might be condensed? So I just, let me just open that up first. What was the process like for you, looking at and thinking about the questions?
I'll start. I chose 6 different ones. And for me, my focus really was, how would I feel in the moment of having this presented? So my number 1 was number 8. And it encourage deeper honesty and authenticity. And my process of selecting all 6 questions really began from what I felt was needed for me, and then how I would feel the others in the conversation I'm having would also be able to receive what that goodness spark. So every time I went into another, what's more important to me, it was really one of those mirroring effects that occurred for me. And I do feel there's some that could be condensed. And I really found it like an opportunity to realize that there's other pieces of our conversations at play, more so than the words that we speak to each other. So that's what I found from this exercise. Thank you.
Yeah, and I kind of felt the same way, that there was some of the questions that I tried to review them in the same way. How would I feel in that situation? But and what would cause somebody to feel most comfortable to open up and be honest, so that they could break through some of that inertia. So I definitely felt along the same wavelength on there. Um, everything I do everything in the lens of psych rehab, because that's my background. So feeling accepted and valued, that's part of our core principles, and giving people the opportunity to learn how to think outside of the box so that they can break through barriers was a big one for me. So that I made sure that most of those values were somehow integrated in the questions that I chose. Um, and I think that you also brought up the importance of relationship. So without having a good relationship, you cannot make forward movement on any of those questions. So I thought that for me, just making sure the person felt safe with me, they felt trustworthy of me, and that they can trust that I wouldn't be judgmental in any way, that I actually valued that they had their own lives to move forward in. So that's kind of how I looked at it. So I try to look at it from the people that I serve currently, and how I would want to have people kind of think about how they would offer me that support as well.
I'm looking at I just took a photograph of them because I kind of need to keep going through them. There was so much. I really had trouble picking. I had trouble with the whole thing of what was X. I couldn't quite grasp X. but hold on, I'm trying to I lost the picture of all of us. Oh wait, now I really am losing us. Oh, here's the questions. Good. Okay. I was like the last one, do I have a solid relationship with someone who would be excited and open to hosting? And I assumed that meant, hosting a workshop, a bridge workshop. And that was important to me, but I do know that sometimes I don't have a solid relationship with the people who hire me or host me. It's a crapshoot when I go in there. I don't know how it's really gonna work out. So I kind of went with the things I was looking for were safety is my first word. I use that word in almost everything, and I've had people challenge me on that. Why are you so attached to safety? And I started to realize I don't have to explain that to anyone. It just is. I need safety. I didn't have it as a child. Every day I walked out of my house and went to school, there was no safety for me. So, and even with my parents, it was, though they tried, it wasn't really there in the house for me. So that's that's big for me. Then I like the words like laughter. Laughter and joy are important to me. That's why when I designed this workshop in the first place, we tried to put in funny stuff. Some of the games we did and things, we were trying to make it fun and funny. All the workshops that Phil and I did together, we added things in that were just plain old silly. We usually started with that stuff, so people were laughing before we went any further. So that's really important. And I liked the words out of the box. That's me. Aquarius is like way about being out of the box. And the word creativity. Well, my business is called Creative Crisis Care. I just love that word creativity. When people usually have to pick 3 words to describe me, usually creative is the first one they pick. But safety would be the first absolute thing that I go with, so I was really glad that that was in there. Do I feel safe exploring X? I think I picked that one. I can't remember the numbers I picked. I wrote them down. Let me see here. I picked 5, 6, 8, 10, and 15. Right. See, so 15 had the lightness and laughter. And then 5, the different perspectives. I know that I want my perspective to be heard. So I want to learn how to listen to others' perspectives. That was important.
Thank you, Janet. What came up for me while you were sharing that was sometimes for a lot of people that I've been communicating with, sometimes creativity doesn't feel safe. So I was really intrigued that you first mentioned safety and then exploring creativity. So that was something that it just reminded me of a conversation that I had on a board, on a nonprofit board, where it was actually discussed that people feel intimidated by creativity. So that's what came up for me, and that's what I appreciate so much, that maybe creativity can help us to explore what is safe and how to try some things that are new. For me, it was interesting going through the notes and then pulling out the questions from our discussion that we had before. I did not pick my top 5 until this morning because I took in what Gary had given me. I had took in what you had given, Janet, and I intentionally picked some things that you two did not commonly pick. Just because I felt like we could have a productive conversation about what was in common. And then I got Lynn's questions in. I'm like, oh, okay. So she, here's some of the ones that she picked that I picked as well. So it was for me, it's very fascinating to just find out what people choose and why they chose it. So so that's what it was. That's what it was like for me. I would like to make note that the one question, since Nefertiti had introduced her top question, I do want to make note that Janet, Nefertiti, Lynn, and Gary all picked number 8. Okay, does X encourage
Oh,
deeper,
that's really interesting.
deeper honesty and authenticity? So I'd like to introduce a process that we'll be doing more here in future conversations, but this is how we come to consent or vote. So I would like to propose that number 8 is definitely officially one of our top 5. And the way we weigh in on that is, thumbs up is a yes, I agree. The waving hand is kind of like, it's safe enough to try. And instead of thumbs down, because because of the kind of like the negative connotation that comes with the thumbs down, present. I want to talk about this more. Something, there's something happening that doesn't quite feel right yet. I want to talk about it. So we open that up to a conversation. So between the 4 of us here, I would like to present that that number 8. I feel that we've come to alignment that number 8 should definitely be one of our top 5 questions. So how do we feel about that? Yes, no, or safe enough to try? And the question is, does X encourage deeper honesty and authenticity? Yeah, Janet?
Can you first just explain to me a little more about X?
Sure. X is going to be a course of action. Like you said, possibly a workshop. Just some of the things. Some of the things I would like to explore is investing time in helping the Suicide Prevention Council understand what we're doing. One of the X's is, maybe this is a staff training. That was some of the things that Lynn was talking about. Maybe this could be a staff training. X might be, an improv workshop. So we have about 11 or 12 X's at the moment. So what we're going to be exploring in future? Yeah, go ahead, Janet.
Did you pick that one, or it was just the others? The rest of us picked that one.
Pick one. What?
Did you pick number 8? You said a bunch of us did.
Actually, I intentionally did not choose 8 simply because I was seeing a lot of correlation there. And I asked myself before this conversation, can I definitely agree to align on 8? And I said, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'd like to put my hand out, like,
Sure.
can we discuss this?
Absolutely.
Because I'll tell you what came up for me just now when you explained X.
Mhm.
I thought of the Suicide Prevention Committee, and I thought, no, these people do. I don't feel safe getting honest and authentic with them. They rarely do.
Mhm.
They rarely, every now and then, like Selena will start talking about something from her life, and
Mhm.
she'll get authentic. But I don't hear they're very clinical, these people.
Mhm.
And I mostly hear them just talk about clinical stuff.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trust them to get honest or authentic about themselves in much of a way. It's really sad. It's like, just all it is boom, 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 boom. Here's what we've got to do. Here's what we're going to do. Da, 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 da. And I remember when we first talked about this, you and I got scared at the idea of it.
Mhm.
I just thought, they don't think they even have enough time. It goes back to that discussion that we were having the other day. They don't have time for this. They just want to plan. And I see it all over. I wonder, Lynn, if you see that too. I see it a lot in mental health field with clinicians. They just want to get down to, let's do what they don't want to talk about themselves.
Mhm.
Let's do what has to be done.
Great. Can I pause here for a moment, Janet? That's, this is exactly the direction that we're going in to discuss this. Now it's a dissent conversation. So yes, this is definitely, what X, whatever X is that that inspires us. I would like to hold off playing there yet until we align on what's most important. But I'm very glad that you had mentioned that, because that's how I feel as well too. And that's why I think number 8 is a great question. because it really allows us to, one, be honest and authentic with us, between us. And if we were to invest more time with the Suicide Prevention Council, we would probably lead with this conversation, and we're going to be able to measure actual data, numerical data through this in a moment. But I said, if they're interested in exploring this with us, one of the things that we would invite them to is an honest and authentic conversation. And if that's not okay with them, then that's perfectly fine. That's the kind of thing that I would like to encourage alignment in our values, so that a conversation with them is possible, because we've discussed how we feel about that course of action. Yeah. Reflections.
I like to reflect on number 8.
Mhm.
I feel like it's a very good filtering system to use. So, when it comes to X, it feels like for me, an opportunity for me to be in a space of whatever that X is, and be aware of the desire for the deeper honesty and authenticity to also be present at the same time. So that's what I'm really excited about. And realizing that we all are in different spaces and places, and the perspective is like, wow, like I don't have 12, 15 years of education in the clinical world. But I bet you if I sat in those classes and listened to those words, I would start to be in that kind of formatted way. And then that's just, the focus I am. So it'd be awesome to possibly see if we may be able to offer them a different space to be a different way. So it's pretty cool. Thanks.
I know with my interns and my staff, we talk about the thought of how can we be authentic as best we can within the ethical realm of what we do. And I know that just from working inside of the hospital, one of the reasons why some of the more medical model folks are very shut off and kind of barriered and not authentic, or come across as not being authentic, is because they've kind of been burned in the past by sharing, or they feel that by being authentic, it causes them to seem like less of a professional. So there's definitely a boundary there that needs to be touched up, kind of like clarified, that it's okay to be human, that we should be role modeling what human behavior looks like, right? If we're teaching people to have flat emotions all the time by what we do, we're role modeling behavior, good behaviors. People are experiencing how to speak, and we're teaching people how to learn skills to have communication. So if communication is always one-sided and it's cold and there's no emotion, and we don't show how to process emotion by being authentic in the moment, it could be very hard to try to teach those behaviors to the people that we serve. So I think if you are able to present something in a way that shows that one, it's healthier for you as a person to be authentic and not have to be somebody totally different for 8 hours a day, and how that does affect your psyche over time. Um, but that is actually not an ethical thing, that you're harming somebody by showing those emotions. You're actually helping them to see that a normal human being has a range of emotions, and that's okay. Is when they get out of hand and it's affecting your life that it becomes a problem. So I don't think that the medical model folks would be against learning it. It's just against what they've always kind of been taught. So that's the barrier there. How do you teach people that it's okay to be authentic, and how that makes your staff healthier when they don't have to hide who they are all day long?
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. And what came up for me as you were sharing that is the question, does this allow us to identify and explore what is ethical behavior? Because what I'm hearing is from the staff or the clinician point of view, showing feeling or showing showing that kind of vulnerability might be a question of ethics. So, so that's my brief reflection on that. So thank you so much for that. Any other reflections or clarifying questions that you have at this moment?
So currently I'm good.
So I'll ask again. How do we feel about including question number 8 as one of our top 5? Is it a yes? I'm not sure. Or yes, Janet? Okay, yeah. Lynn, I'll listen verbally. Are you okay? Is that okay? Do you consent to having number 8 be one of our top 5 questions?
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought I put it in the chat. My bad.
Oh, you probably
Yeah.
did. I don't have my
When
chat.
you, wait, I do have a clarifying question.
Mhm.
When you say as part of the questions, for whom?
Mhm.
For
For
just
us.
us?
For us.
Okay. You don't mean for like people we may be working with necessarily.
We'll see.
Maybe.
That is
Okay.
yet to be determined. That is
Okay.
yet to be
I got it.
determined. Mhm.
I think Lynn makes a great point. I think that probably some people who work in the field, well, I don't know if this is the way you're saying it, Lynn, this is what I'm getting, is they probably would be threatened by the word authentic. How far are they themselves willing to go? And I really liked the concept of, I'm glad you pointed that out, because yesterday I taught a class that was very creative, and there were people who sat there, and there were a couple of men, it's usually the men, didn't want to do it, didn't want to answer the questions, didn't want to look. They felt it was threatening. They wanted to stay status quo. One of them said, I'm scared that if I do this, I'll get angry. I'll look at it, my feelings will come up and I'll get reactive. I don't want to get that way. I just want to stay nice and even. So that is an issue for a lot of people, is let me just stay even and not explore.
Yeah,
But I say, yes, that's a good question.
great. Great. Excellent. So I feel also too, since Gary picked that question as well too, so I feel safe as well in agreeing with that as well, since that was one of the ones that Gary had submitted as well. So excellent. So I will ask here, and I'll hopefully my screen doesn't boot me off here. I'll share the screen again. Is there any question that you see once they come up? There we go. Any question that you see that you're feeling pulled towards right now that you want to explore a little bit more? Because I'm not going to reveal more commonality yet. I'd like to see who feels compelled to share and speak about one of the questions here. Okay, go ahead, Janet.
I'm looking at number 1 and I'm thinking, gee, why didn't I pick number 1? That is such a big issue for me. I talk about it a lot with my clients. Like, all you got to even do is when someone tells you what they're going through, all you got to do is just say, I hear you, or I got it. That to me can be so validating alone, Validation is big. I don't know why I didn't pick that. I must have liked the other ones more, maybe. I don't know. But that goes with safety.
Okay. That brings up a great point, Janet. Safety and validation. Are they the same? Are they different? Are they slightly different? Kind of the same? Let's explore that. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Janet.
I was just going to say, I'm looking at the next one, accepted and valued. Those words even go with, for me, with safe and validating.
Yeah. So reflections. Yeah, go ahead, Neff.
So one thing that's come to mind, because safety had been a very go-to word for myself in 2020, and in the past 2 years, especially a lot more this past week, I've been in a space of how can I be in a safe feeling here and now, along with whatever may be seemingly unsafe around me. So that's been pretty interesting to explore what I consider safe or how I feel validated by myself, how I feel accepted by myself, and how I feel valued. A lot of these questions for me, I picked my top 6 last night.
Mhm.
And along with me taking the first stand of how would I feel about it in a conversation with another, I really took time to think about how I felt about the question with myself alone.
Mm.
So that's another layer that came up for me as well in considering these questions.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think that validation and safety are the same thing.
Mhm.
I think that there's people who are smart enough to validate your feelings because they can hear what you're saying, but they're not necessarily safe people.
Mm. Mm.
I think that that's 2 separate topics there.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. Reflections on that. Wow. Lynn, I would like to ask, I would just like to say, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that, please.
I think that sometimes you just from some of the perspectives I've heard from people who've gone to see some therapists or who've shared their feelings with people or family members, maybe they share some really dark stuff with a family member and they are validated by that family member, but then the family member kind of brings that up to somebody else or shares those things with other people, and they're not necessarily in a place where uh, those statements are kept quiet and aren't shared with other folks. um, or even in the hospital, if somebody feels comfortable with one person, it gets shared with the team sometimes. And
Mhm.
maybe somebody on that team you don't trust, but you
Mhm.
trust that person that you talk to, and you don't really think about how many people are involved with that choice you made of sharing something, and who gets
Mhm.
to read that. It goes in a chart, and there's a guy from the Joint Commission that's going to read it, and the auditor that's going to read it, and your 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 judge is going to read it, and other stuff. So it's not even just sharing with that one person that might feel like they've validated your feelings, but now everybody knows that one thing, and definitely isn't necessarily a safe place
Yeah.
to share with somebody who understands how to validate your feelings.
Good. Good discernment. Discernment. Yes. Yes. So what I'm hearing, and please, please correct me, and please anybody, please feel free to correct me. From what I'm getting from this is that safety. Safety is a priority, is important. Because when you brought that up at first, when you talked about validation and connecting that to safety, bringing it to safety. What I'm hearing is, perhaps we might explore safety, being a top value. I'd like to hear from Neff as well too. The questions that you had ended up picking. Was the safety question one of them?
I'm looking at my list and I'm trying to put the numbers together. I want to say off the top of my head that it was no, because I do remember considering it last night that, number 10. Okay, number 10 is not on my top 6.
Mhm.
And the reason I did not choose it is because I am safe.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if I
Okay.
feel unsafe in the moment, it's a call for me to find that comfort, which I spoke about earlier in my check-in, that I know is here and now.
Mm. Mm.
So it's been a pretty backwards exploration or what's it called? Paradoxical. Even in this week alone, I've been in a space where we were discussing wellness recovery and how, although this is a step to become a support for another, they really was expressing the invitation for us to do it for ourselves. So how can I, like I was saying, like this whole week of finding the way to feel okay in the moment. Do I have to call a friend? Do I have to, take a walk outside or drink more water, get more sleep? Like all of those things that I even did the hugging myself during the meeting. I said, if my body
Mm,
feels like, and I feel kind of, ugh, I'll hug myself,
mm,
breathe, So exploring all that for myself and then taking it into the conversation and standing in that safety
mm,
with whatever's presenting. So that's where I was on that.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that you're providing your own safety, Nefertiti. That's what I'm hearing.
My desire every moment.
How does that land? Yeah, I just want to ask, how does that land?
Yeah,
Mhm,
that does land. It's experiential again. I feel there's a lot to be said when I've had conversations with people in reference to their own desires in their own life. And
mhm,
it's like, well, this is the way it is because it's the way it's always been. And I've said that to myself. And then comes the question of, is it a possibility that I could have a different experience? How would that happen? What
mm,
do I need to have a different experience? So that's been some questions, and me being safe in myself in this moment, and then all the different tools that are available for that, deep breathing and, just being present, gratitude, attitude. So
mm,
that's what I've been stepping into a lot.
mm, mm. Thank you, Nefertiti. Yeah, what comes up for me, hearing that too, is getting back to what Linda was saying as well too, between the discernment and the safety as well too, because not so much in the clinical field, but kind of in the spiritual and self-help. I've experienced, um, I've experienced, a lot of people who are good at providing their own safety, and it almost feels like that safety is not a priority. And so that's what's coming up for me is, yeah. What's coming up for me is, I think, how important um, how important that authenticity really is, because there's um, there's this affect, where somebody who is very good at self-moderating and self-moderating and observation, who can provide their own safety. I've also seen people feel very unsafe, in that kind of environment as well too. It's almost like that intimidation of the strength, that intimidation of the creative. Um, so yeah, so anyway, that's just what comes up for me, listening to you. I admire, and I have a deep admiration and respect for your ability to do that. And I'm questioning if that might not be intimidating for some people, or if that does not in some way creates an unsafe environment. Again, going back to that validation and safety question. So anyway, that's just my reflections on that.
Well, my second choice for the questions was number 3,
Mm-hmm.
for space
Mutual
for mutual
consideration.
consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because I found that taking that one step further, that we all do have our own experience that is valid, and to be aware of that and consider, like, be
Mm,
aware. It's
yeah.
top priority as well.
So then there's some of that connection between safety and mutual consideration right there. Very cool. Very cool. I'd like to check in with Lynn or Janet. What's happening?
Well, I'm noticing I'm having trouble following the conversation today.
Mhm.
I think the words, I'm having trouble with words, like they're kind of sifting in and going out and I'm picking up a word here, a phrase there. It could be the anesthesia still. I don't know. They say it takes a while for it to leave your body. But I really did catch on to what you said, Lynn, about validation and safety. And I'm trying to go back through my history. And I think I'm actually remembering that I have worked with people who have been very validating of my work and who I am, but I don't necessarily feel safe with them. But I'm also thinking that usually when I feel really safe with somebody, they tend to be very validating people. They really make me feel heard and valued and accepted. Um, and they, you know, they, but then I'm thinking there have been times when people have not validated what I've said. They've completely disagreed with it. And that's been good for me at times. I really needed to hear that. Lack of validation kind of really got me looking at myself and reconsidering myself. So I'm just playing around a lot with like, I'm looking for I'm trying to make a statement in my head. Well, to say like, because I'm validated doesn't mean I feel safe, but if I feel safe, then I'm validated. I don't know. I'm, when people have not validated me and disagreed with me, it feels unsafe, but it's the kind of unsafe that calls me to reconsider what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I actually, so one question I would put out there, does validation mean agreement? Because validation to me doesn't mean agreement. Validation means I understand what you're feeling, but I can disagree with what you're feeling.
Ah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you're right. That's a good
If you
point.
have a good relationship with somebody and you feel like you can hear the criticism and they feel like they can give it and they can give that authentic criticism, that's when you start to have those breakthroughs. That was one that that was important to me to move past the inertia, number 16. So for me, that's when you really truly understand somebody, you can validate what they're saying, but you can also start to question their belief systems and their actions and if that's in line with what they want to do with themselves. So that's when you really can start to step forward and break that inertia. So yeah,
That's a great point.
validation's important, but agreeance is not.
Necessarily validation. I have to use the bathroom. I'll be right back.
Sure, sure. We'll hold for a moment. Morning. Today is August 6, 2022. It is about 6:40 in the morning. So welcome. We're going to be talking a little bit more about how much time do we have today. So topic is time. And for the rest of these presentations, we're going to be focusing on how do we make time an asset. So that's a concept that requires a deep conversation, that requires a changing of relationships. So let me check in. How am I arriving? I'm arriving feeling pretty neutral right now. I am aware that whenever I do present material like this, I tend to get really far into my head space, and sometimes I throw 2 to 3 hours worth of content at somebody, and I get this glazed over look. So so I'm arriving being aware of that, and I'm arriving wanting to come more from my heart. The reason why I'm doing this, the reason why I want to start to reveal the numbers, show the numbers, is because there is an abundant opportunity for all of us to change our world. Um, so I'm arriving with the sense of wanting to connect, wanting to reveal what is real to me. What has been a very powerful motivator in my life. and understanding how that we're much more valuable working together than we are competing with each other. So I'm arriving with that sense of compassion and wanting connection. So today I'm bringing the questions. How much time do we have, or how much time really is there that can be an asset? How do we make our time more valuable? How do we make our time the most valuable asset? And I often ask the question, how do we make it even more valuable than what we are led to believe are scarce commodities like real estate, oil, gold, and even though data is also one of the most valuable resources, we are actually kind of changing data to make every single human being on this planet more valuable in a core economic system. And those are the questions. And the question is, how do we invite something more, something new, something better, and something different into our experience? And I think, to explore that last question, how do we invite something more, something new, something better, something different, is to start listening on a deeper level, start practicing what we call generous listening. And that's what helps us to tune into the value of someone else. Because if we come into this being an expert or thinking that, we are the expert of our field, it leaves very little room for new information to come in. And I believe that's how people become exploited, is when there's these codependent relationships about, I know more than you, or I am superior to you, I am higher up in the hierarchy than you. But when you turn it around and you start listening and asking deeper questions and being conscious about finding the value in the other person, even if they do not align with your values whatsoever, and that, being curious about that starts to level out that playing field between codependency and interdependency, which is where the interdependent relationships can evolve, can emerge from the codependent structure that we're in right now. And that's why I say in a core economy, which is what we're establishing here, no one is expendable, and every life touches a million lives. And this is the experiment that will prove that. And what happens to everybody who participates in this experiment, what happens to them as far as their financial status, that's just the proof that the experiment worked. All right, so I am going to share, and we're going to explore the first question. How much time do we really have? How much time is there available? So when my screen comes up there, I do this, but you will see that there are expected to be 8 billion people by 2023. That's next year. So 8,031,800,338 to be exact. So anyway, that's the expected global population in 2023. Now, these are all of the people who can experience time. And time is either experienced, exploited, or both. And that is amazing to me, that there are 8 billion people on this planet. Some people would see that as a curse and a burden. I see that as beauty, as perfection. There are 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. So that means for every person that is living, there is 8,790 hours a year. So that's what everybody, is experiencing. They're experiencing it in different ways, based on your feeling or your relationships. That time goes by very slow. That time can go by very fast. My experience is that for children, that time goes by very slow, and the older you get, the faster it goes. Okay, so we'll take that same number, 8,790 hours a year, times 72 years which I put in as the average life expectancy. I've seen some statistics that report that as being 78 years. I'm just going to stick with 72 here because it provides a more conservative estimate of what we're going for here. So what that means is every single human life, if they live to be that 72 average years, will live 632,880 hours per person. So you take that same population that's expected in 2023, and that's a snapshot. That's the average of, if we're going with 72 years as the average lifespan, we're looking at the average population from 30 to 35 years ago to 30 to 35 years in the future, if the population continues to grow. So what we're looking at is 5.08 quadrillion hours. So I want to pause for a moment there and let that set in. 5.08 quadrillion hours. And the clock goes off when I say that. Hello. So take a moment to really reflect on how much time, how much of an abundance there is on this planet. To kind of put it in perspective, as of the first quarter here in the year 2022, the global debt was reported to be about $305 trillion. So if you take this 5 quadrillion hours and compare it to the $305 trillion, that debt really only makes up for about 6% of the hours that humanity has as an asset. So that begs the question, well, how much is that hour worth? And how do we figure out how much is our time worth, our hour worth? We're going to go over that tomorrow. So I'm going to stop here because I really want to leave you with that, with that information, with that knowledge, that collectively as a human species, we have a 5 quadrillion hour asset. And that's only accessible if we work together. So if we work together, it's an asset. If we compete with each other, it's a liability. So we'll explore more on how do we make our time more valuable as a sovereign being in interdependent relationships. How do we make that time an asset? How do we make it more valuable? So tomorrow we're going to explore how much is an hour worth. And as we continue on in these presentations, we'll continue to explore how do we change the value of that hour through interdependent relationships. So before I go, I am going to just revisit. There we go. We're just going to revisit ourworld.org one more time today. And after you log into your account at ourworld.org, click on services and then report hours. And today you'll say, I provided this service, put in today's date. So we're at the end of the first part of the invitation conversation. So you'll be saying this is for one member, 1 hour, or whatever it is that you spent watching this segment. And this is a service you are providing to the Karmic Margin Call Project. Again, I'm going to rely on repetition here. You are providing the service. This is creditable to you, or you are able to start accruing market share, based on your services. So listening to this, learning about this is a service you're providing to us and to humanity. I can't emphasize that enough. It's a service you are providing to all of us. So listening and receiving information cannot be understated. So we've been putting this under Class Lessons Tutor. It's a presentation workshop, and you can type in the note, Invitation Conversation Part 1, and then hit Record Transaction, and you will get credit for this hour. And this is all leading somewhere, I do promise. All right, so this is Mike Schumann. I am the Administrative Director of the Karmic Margin Call Project, and I will see you next time.